Hello again, everyone. This video will be a continuation of the last, and we'll further be discussing the normal distribution alongside the Art of Stat Distributions app. If you don't have it yet and you somehow watched the first video without it, the way you can get it is right here on the front page of my phone. You can go to the App Store and type in Art of Stat Distributions, and it should be the first result for you. Now we can open it up and we can return to the normal distribution, being the first blue one under continuous, and here we are. As a quick summary of the last video, we briefly went over the meanings of mu and sigma and dived into the empirical rule of 68% of the data being 1 standard deviation from the mean, then 95, and finally 99.7 for 3. For this video, we'll be using the Art of Stat Distributions app normal distribution section to reconfirm some things we might already know about the empirical rule. For this, we'll be using the find probability section. And at the bottom, we have been using the explore distribution section, but we'll be moving on to the find probability section at the bottom. Let's return to our original example in the first normal distribution video about flights costing about an average of $100 with a standard deviation of 10. So let's change our mu at the top here to 100 and our standard deviation to 10. Let's first start by setting the type of probability to interval, so that we'll be measuring the percentage of values between the two markers. At the bottom, we have type of probability. It's initially set to lower tail when you first download the app, but we're going to change that to interval. So the very first automatic things that are put into the lower bound and the upper bound might kind of clue you in on where we're going to be headed with this. But let's try changing the lower bound to 90 and the upper bound to 110. And this should look kind of familiar to what we were looking into in the last video. It looks like the amount of values, the percentage of values, between 90 and 110 is about 68%, which makes sense because, as we talked about in the first video, is 1 standard deviation from the mean. I imagine that the rest of the empirical rule will also apply. So let's go back to how it initially had it set. We'll have 80 be the lower bound and 120 be the upper bound. And after we've done that, we see we have about 95% again, which really lines up with the empirical rule. So the find probability section is already confirming some things we should know. So say we would like to actually know, well, what about what percentage of data falls beyond a number or below a number? So let's pretend I'd like to know, well, what percentage of flyers bought tickets that costed less than $90? Well, we could actually do some mental math to figure that out. If we know 68% of flyers are on the inside of the 1 standard deviation away, so we'll do that. We'll put 90 here and 110. If we know that 68% are here, we know that 32% of the remaining flyers are on the outside, and I only asked the percentage less than 90, so we would do 32 divided by 2, giving us 16% of the flyers are going to be lower than 90. Well, how do we figure this out directly with the app? We can change our type of probability to a single-tailed test. So I'd like to know less than 90, so I'm going to choose lower-tailed, and we're going to have put in the value 90 here, which is automatically put in for me. And as it shows, we have 15.87% of flyers are have paid less than $90 for the price of their tickets, which should check out as well. Now, this is really nice because we are able to figure out some things using some mental math and our understanding of the empirical rule to solve some questions that we might have. But not every question is going to be as simple as that. Some questions may be, well, let's say talk about the upper tail, what about 115? What about the percentage of people who paid over $115? Now, that one doesn't fall around a standard deviation, so it's going to be much harder to figure out. Fortunately, the app can directly find the probability of a value more than 115, so let's try that out. Like I said more, so let's go type of probability, upper tail, and our value we talked about was 115. And now that we figured this out, about 6.68% of flyers paid for a ticket that was over $115. The third video in this series is going to look at the problem of finding percentiles, values on the x-axis that correspond to a specific probability. I hope that this has been really helpful in further understanding how to use the find probability section, and the percentile section is going to have to recap what you've seen before on things like the FCAT and standardized testing. I'll see you soon.